All right then. Hello everyone, and welcome to a a new era of top tier tiers. This isn't going to be less of a set review type thing and more of a general podcasty thing where we talk about Weiss adjacent topics. You've got me. My name's Alfred Yang. Well, I went by Light Cheap Planet, but nowadays I don't have any time for that. And with me is well my partner in crime, Thomas Im.
Hello. It has been a long
So
time.
it really has. I don't even know when the last video we uploaded was.
It was
Probably
2 years
something
ago. It's Goblin
quite a
Slayer.
while. Goblin Slayer, Goblin Slayer.
It was right before
Righto.
COVID. Actually, you could just say COVID killed us, and now
We took
we're
we
back.
took the COVID holiday and we're all back. But it is as always good to be back. I trust that everyone's passion for Weiss has not died down significantly in the meantime, and we've got plenty to talk about in regards to how the game has evolved over COVID. But before we do that, we'll quickly just run into who we are and why you should care even slightly about what we might have to say. Uh, well, me, I've been playing this game for far too long. I think even if you ignore COVID, it's been over 10 years. And nowadays, I mostly shitpost as a moderator on a number of different forums. Uh, and I don't have much time to play competitively outside of the occasional webcam game, but the game is still as fun as ever to me, so you might get a more nuanced, casual take from me this time around.
Right. I have kept up with the game a little bit more than Alf has, past couple of years at least, and I've been playing since English Nisekoi was my first set release, and that was 2014, 2013. I'm trying to remember what the Japanese set was because that'll help me timestamp it better. But
Yeah,
I
um,
I think it
and
was
you
Fate. It was Unlimited Blade Works. I think no, it was Prisma Ilya's Y. I remember this very distinctly actually.
somewhere around there, I'm sure, but you've also you've also had some reasonable accomplishments in the game. You came second at the nationals. Well, you'd know more about your tops than I would, right?
Yeah, I mean it's mostly a bunch of trios tops. Recently top aided Houston Springfest, and I won two Springfests in 2019, and before that not really that much, but
Oh well, Weiss only really started getting really explosive around 2018, 2019, and it's gotten only more competitive since. Although there were some blips here and there during the COVID era, we can certainly talk about that in the future. But for now, you rest assured, we both know at least a little bit about this game, and we take pleasure in being able to talk about it. And maybe you might enjoy hearing one or two things from these old. I don't know if you count as old actually. I
I,
don't know.
I I think I'm pretty old now, actually,
Yeah,
compared to the
fair
average
enough.
age of the Weiss player. Pretty interesting, to be honest.
Yeah, fair enough. So we were initially going to talk about your recent trip to Houston and some things that come out of that, but something that very topical that just happened was the ban list for the Japanese format, and both myself and Tom we play both formats. And well, when I can be bothered, I test pretty religiously, but Japanese has always been the format I care more about. And this most recent ban list, there hasn't actually been too much talk about it, but if you ask me, it has had one of the most expansive lists of bans and unbans in quite some time.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. My initial impression was that it was quite a big band list, a lot of stuff.
Funnily though, even though it was a pretty big ban list in terms of what got put on and what got taken off, I'd say that in terms of actual impact on the meta, it's not actually going to have as big an impact as it could have. And there's a few things we about that, but let's before we get into that, let's talk very briefly about what got banned, and we'll summarize it for the people who aren't who don't have a photographic memory or who weren't paying as much attention.
Right.
So the high profile bands I'd say would be the quintessential quintuplets Go Toba no Hanayome and Assault Lily, both getting they haven't been on the ban list before, and they've both gotten well, they've both gotten ban lists. I wouldn't say they're particularly crippling. They've certainly kept both decks at least somewhat playable. Love Live Superstar has also been banned even further. Before, it had its Clock Encore characters cut off because that removed its ability to accelerate to 3-6 and activate certain very egregious effects. Now it's just had those egregious effects put on the list instead. And the last ban, and one which was wholly unexpected to me at the very least, was Mushoku Tensei getting some standby staples put onto the list. Not a particularly large list of bans for Mushoku Tensei, but certainly an impactful duo. Arguably the most impactful. Well, Love Live Superstar has the most impactful hit, but oddly, I'd say Mushoku has been somehow hit harder than both Quince and Assault Lily.
Mm, that is interesting. I don't know how I feel about that
It's hard to
because
say,
I
right?
I'm
Because
obviously biased because I've played
oh,
Quince for a while and I don't have that much experience playing Mushoku. So obviously I want to naturally downplay the set that I play, of course. But I think it's pretty comparable. I think the hits are like fairly comparable actually between the two decks. Um
full disclosure, of all of the sets that were affected on the ban list, I think the only ones that I own are Grisaia, Nisekoi,
oh
and
yeah.
Haruhi.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas you've got you've got Quince.
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh
So to summarize the bans, Quince got banned. Their 8 standby or 12 standby, whatever you want to call it, deck is now significantly neutered. Assault Lily has had a slap on the wrist. I think that the deck is still incredibly powerful, just in multiple other configurations. Love Live Superstar has one really egregious top end cut out of, well, it's not quite out of existence, but it may as well be. And Mushoku Tensei has lost a very significant tool regardless of what you pick. And let's quickly cover the unbans. The first unban, and one which was a long time coming, I'd say, was well, I'm going by the graphic that I've got. So the first one is the Order of Rabbit or Gochumon was Gochu, so whatever you want to call it.
hmm.
That's just been completely lifted off the list. Do you think that's going to do anything?
Um maybe probably not. To be real.
Yeah,
Like
I think the Rabbit House decks that were using Coco Achino, the level 3 finisher, were already working fine, but they were still just worse than the mono blue decks anyway.
yeah, and I think
That was my impression.
right, yeah. And those decks could run the anti-change counter if they so felt like it, so
Yeah,
this just seems
I don't think that.
like a legacy unban, I guess.
Yeah, just tidying up on the ban list. The Fruit of Grisaia no Kaijitsu, is now unbanned, and
Completely free.
yep, it was a deck that was already barely fun. So Grisaia is a troubled deck. When the first set came out, it was basically a deck that was barely held together. Every single card in the deck was like just good enough, and with only a couple standouts, it was the perfect definition of a deck that was more than the sum of its parts. It was a surprisingly synergy driven deck that had to make do with some very mediocre cards here and there. With the advent of the second set, there may well be something more to it. I'm not particularly convinced because I think the second set has departed heavily from what made the first set strong. But now we'll see some people experimenting with Grisaia, and we'll have a competent anti-heal deck romping around the meta for a little while.
Very exciting.
For those of us who own the deck, I
Exactly.
dismantled mine. I dismantled mine and converted it into a Sachi deck quite a while ago, so
Hmm.
I'm not going to spend too much time on that. Sword Art Online. So it says that Sword Art Online's on the ban list. In reality, what's on the ban list is the 10th anniversary deck, which is a very specific one booster deck. The card that was taken off is the Arsenal Runner, which will improve every deck's level 0 somewhat, and the cards that remain on the ban list are the 0/0 Kirito that was pivotal to the deck converting advantage into selection, and the 0/0 Heathcliff, a very strong, what a Yu-Gi-Oh player might call a floodgate. It prevents encore on both sides of the field, which is, I think those cards are healthy to have in moderation. And I guess that now people will be able to play a slightly better level 0 in their 10th anniversary SAO decks. Love Live Superstar had its Clock Encore Enablers unbanned because the cards that made it particularly problematic have now taken their place on the ban list. So it only makes sense to get those cards off the ban list, and this way I no longer ever have to see Shuriko on the stupid ban list graphic again. She is a horrible gremlin.
Oh, it was so
Uh,
cool. Yeah, it was so sick. Isn't it? Isn't it? I feel like it was so weird that the game's mascot was never just not present anywhere. I don't know. What
he's
was
on
not sick
all
was
the
how
cards.
expensive and hard to find the promos were for sure. So it's like, um,
Yeah, definitely. I think it was a very odd ban to choose that of all things to ban, especially when people might have gone to search for those promos. And this, I think, makes a lot more sense. But that also means this promo has now been relegated to complete obscurity, and basically no one is going to play it anymore. So, sucks to suck, I guess. Nisekoi has had Marika lifted to a limit of 3. For some godforsaken reason, it's not at 4. This is not a deck that could reasonably triple Marika even back in the quote unquote good old days, so I don't know why they don't just lift it to 4 and give Nisekoi players that dream again. In fact, I think if you try to build the deck now, you might not even want 4 Marika anyway. The
hot take.
melancholy of hot take. Well, I mean, feel free to prove me wrong. The melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya has now got a world of faded colors, also known by the community as Emo Swing, going up to a limit of 3. This card was a pretty decent plussing engine back in the day, but now we've got this mechanic called Self-Tap Brainstorm, which makes this card significantly less impressive. So yeah, we've still got the information binding event counter banned because Bushiroad does not want you getting rid of your opponent's climaxes, and that card is going to stay on the ban list for all eternity.
Or at
Now,
least until they decide that climax combos are not the bread and butter of this game. Which,
I don't think that's ever going to happen. I think the
Post
design
Why
is
Schwartz
too
Blau, dude? Why
great.
Schwartz Blau, dude?
Why Schwartz Blau is going to be about slamming two souls and one person dying very quickly.
I'm down. I'm down.
All right, so what was missed in this ban list? That's the first thing we should touch on briefly. And I don't have too many strong opinions here, but I do think there are a couple things that should have happened.
Right.
The first one is that they really should consider taking some of these old cards off the ban list. I think that you can probably get one of Love Live Sunshine's Choose 3s off. You can probably get Kantai Collection's Choose 2 off. You can probably remove something from. Oh, I don't know if you can remove something from Fate. I think that's just high risk, low reward. Uh, I'd say that.
Especially since standby decks were nerfed. I think a huge, well, a reason why people don't like playing Fate in English, even though it mostly has all the tools that Japanese deck had, is that standby is has been a huge presence in English recently. So people are reluctant to play Fate for a lot of reasons, but that's one of them for sure. So unbanning
I
Fate after you've just hit the most prominent 8 standby decks in the meta might be a bit of a risk. Yeah.
I have always been of the opinion that Fate is okay into standby. I don't think it has good power lines, but I think that at level 2 it really does have good power lines, and it's a very competent deck at just playing climaxes. But that's not really here nor there. I think that, as odd as this might sound, they could strongly consider taking a card off Data Live, because My Little Shido is just not a card that was played anyway. So they could just take that off and be in line with the English ban list, and everything would be fine. Outside of that,
Yes.
I don't think anything else particularly stands out.
I was gonna say
Of course,
rest. I was gonna say they could take rest off, but there's a new set
I
this year,
mean,
so they
or
can't.
like if they, yeah, with the new set announcements of Key All Stars, if for example they make Little Busters a very strong 8 standby deck,
Oh God, please no.
you probably don't want multiple copies of Rest available to that particular deck. That sounds quite problematic, especially
That
given Little Busters has a card which reads, "If you have 6 clock at the end of your opponent's attack step, shuffle your clock into your deck."
I mean,
Like,
it just has so many absurd cards that 8 standby would abuse. Like,
yep, yep. Right
so
now we only have 4 standbys, so the deck is pretty bad. But if there were 8 standbys, I think it'd be a really fun deck to play. I just don't think that deck needs Rest
also
at
bear
all.
with us. We're talking about Little Busters because we have both played LB for a long time, so we like to meme about it.
It's
Uh,
effectively my signature deck, all things considered. And I do want to touch on this because it's a pretty big talking point. D side, trauma ray or whatever the title is.
I think you got the name, yeah.
Yes, that set I think is really strong. I expect it to be hit quite comprehensively next ban list.
Why is there an
I don't,
underscore in the name?
because they're edgy. Okay.
Is it supposed to be like a censored E, so it's supposed to be decide?
Or maybe it's standing in place, so it's actually deicide, like, killing gods.
Oh, you can't have that. I
No,
see.
maybe. I'm not sure. I don't play the mobile game. I know there are some people out there who do, but that's not me. But Dayside Tramore is a powerful set that has been traumatizing the trio scene in Japan, and with a very high representation, a very high win rate as well. I'd expect that to really see some consideration for the next ban list. I think that other decks that you might look at are the new Nijigasaki set, which is a very competent deck. I don't know too much about it myself. I know you own that set, so you might have words about it in a future
Uh,
episode.
maybe, yeah. If I decide to buy the new set stuff. As far as I know, the only things that the old set, or the only things that you keep from the old set are like the Cheery and the Ricky. So it's like an
Look,
entirely, it's mostly just like
ooh,
a brand new thing, as is
look.
usually the case.
And the other well-performing decks at this point in time are Danmachi is unfortunately maybe the single biggest loser from this ban list because now Quince, which was the best 8 standby deck, and Mushoku Tensei, possibly the second best 8 standby deck, both of which have been hits, both of which were positive matchups for Danmachi. Yes, I know Quince has the 1-1 unreversible. No, that doesn't stop it from having a not great matchup into the deck that plays a climax every turn. I think it's probably lost out more than any other set, and I'd expect to see Danmachi numbers fall. But it remains a very cheap and easy deck to build, and some people just like the property, so it might still be around. Let's see. Hololive. Hololive has never been a deck that converts particularly well. It is still a deck worth considering and is fairly strong. And Gochi Usa is the other deck which escapes ban listing, even though it has incredibly good conversion and representation. So we might see a different ban list for Gochi Usa. Like, can you imagine if we went back to 2017 or whatever and said Gochi's
Uh,
Mono Blue is going to be one of the premier top
mm,
meta decks. Can you imagine what people would say? Can you imagine posting that on Weiss Schwartz foreign community and seeing the reactions to that? Like, it's such a surreal thing to see, you know?
Yeah, I mean, Symphogear and Fate also got their turns to be top tier too. Those were also
Yeah,
things we could not imagine in 2017.
I would
Anything is
at that point
possible.
in time, I would have put any of Nanoha or Vivid Strike or Clannad to be more likely to do well than Symphogear, and yet Symphogear was the one with a it's now got what, like a choose four. Yeah,
Yep.
yep. So you're right. Anything can happen. I think at this point in time, the most likely decks to continue dominating will be D side. I think that Assault Lily will continue to be very strong. It'll just move to a different configuration rather than eight choice. Some people are still very optimistic about Love Live Superstar. I think that's a fair thing to say. Gochi Usamono Blue is going to continue being very strong. Zombieland Saga might have some drops here or there. And I'd say Hololive is always going to be present because it is just always present. Not for like it's just always there. I don't think that's something we can dispute. As well as Bang Dream, which will also always be there. Did I miss anything?
Yes.
I missed
No.
Ilya.
Well,
I missed Ilya.
Ilya
Ilya is
might,
kind of
yeah. Eight
it's
pants,
always been
right?
a pretty strong deck. Yeah, eight pants. It's always been a pretty strong deck. It's got a true level one Azusa effect. It's got lots of neat tools, but at the same time, I think you'd be hard pressed to find a precise reason to play it over a deck like Gochiusa or a deck like D-side Traumaré.
Or Assault Lily, even.
Or yes, or like the Door Pants Assault Lily decks. Or just the eight
Mm,
door, whatever.
Teya became
Okay.
a god, could make a resurgence, though that seems unlikely.
I am I am very skeptical of that. I think Saikano has a chance of doing okay, although I don't think the new set is actually very good. I think it's actually really depressing. Uh,
You're just Utaha fans, am I right?
Look, I own all of the staples. Like I just have them all. I just don't want to buy the new cards because they look bad. Like, what am I doing with this set? It doesn't look like a strong deck.
I think, fair enough. I think Slime could possibly get its foot in the door, and then Sal has yet another set coming this year, to no one's
Oh
surprise.
yeah,
The 10th
but
anniversary anime set. Yeah? Awesome.
will this set have the 10th anniversary trait? Is what I'm wondering,
Just
because
like the
that will, I
anniversary
think,
trait. That would be so
yeah.
funny if they turned it into an animation anniversary trait.
I
I would
reckon
laugh. But yeah, I think
I reckon that would.
Sal 10th has some real potential to be very good.
Another really powerful deck I think is probably slipping on the radars now is a 1k1 Soul Quince deck. I think that's both 8 door and door choice decks are probably quite strong still. You lose very little from either of those sets, and those could be pretty powerful contenders as well.
Yes, definitely. I am a particular fan of 8 door. I think that
It's a
deck
good deck.
has
D-
some untapped potential, but we'll definitely have to
Yeah.
see how things shake up after this ban list.
Yep. Uh, so that's most of the ban list happenings gone by. I don't think we have any major Japanese events coming up in the West, do we?
WGP maybe for North
Maybe.
America. I think Europe has something. I'm not entirely sure. Uh,
Europe's always got their league going on, but I don't think that's quite the same thing. All right. So with that in mind, if you were to take a deck
oh
to
wait,
a
the Capo.
yep,
Could the Capo make a
what
comeback?
I'm skeptical. I think that
All right.
when you've got decks like Assault Lily, running around up top and D-side Traumaré, the Capo is okay. It's just not as efficient as the top end decks. And while it does have some really good tools, like it's got the really powerful Hazuki finisher, it's got like a clock kicking support, which is something that most decks want access to, and it has some fairly uninteractive combos here and there. I think it just isn't quite as good a deck as the others.
Mm,
Its finisher
yeah.
is still up there with the best of them. That I
Man,
can
that's
say
so
confidently.
crazy. I feel like if we went back to 2020 and told people that the Capo would no longer be good because there are decks that just have better finishers, uh,
Yeah,
I feel like
Hazuki is
people, yeah, right? It's so crazy.
Hazuki is just a very, very irritating card to deal with. And like Ichika's still out there. We've still got the combination of I don't know Assault Lily names, but like the pink haired girl and the giving everything icy tail and the restander, the what's her name? Yu I think her name is, because that's the name of the other card that got unbanned or whatever. Like we've moved into an era of Weiss where we can talk about this in a later episode, but we've moved into an era of Weiss where level threes are simultaneously incredibly important and significantly less important. There's just some number of games where level threes do little to nothing, and you could play 2 vanillas in their place and they'd do the same thing, and that's really sad. All
A
right,
bit,
let's
yeah.
a couple more questions to round it out. If you had to pick one deck to take to a win $1 million tournament tomorrow in the Japanese format, what would you take?
Ah, it's a hard
Sorry,
one.
sorry, sorry. In 3 days' time, because the ban list is in 3 days' time. It doesn't actually apply until 3 days from now.
Right. Okay, I'd probably take D side, man. I uh yeah, cold turkey, I'd probably take D side.
I reckon I'm on Door Pants Assault Lily. Um, but I could be convinced to either decide or some sort of Quince deck. I think. We're,
Uh
we're just
yeah.
completely off standby now, right? Like, there's just no standby deck other than maybe Nijigasaki that has any chops.
I don't think Nijisaki's mm, I don't know if Nijisaki has it either. Um
There must always be one. Standby is just like, the Lich King or like the Highlander. There is always one. Because there just always is some guy who wants to play control and be the smart guy. What deck do you reckon it is now?
control does it have to be 8 standby? I have no idea, man.
It standby does. It does control better, right?
I feel like it could be a Hololive deck. Um
Not
uh
impossible.
or maybe I feel like either a Hololive deck or uh one of the Bang Dream decks that
It could still
focused
be
on winning
Quince.
board.
I think it
Oh,
could still be Quince.
could be Quince, sure. That's you mean the 8 standby Quince.
Yes.
Uh its best control card got effectively removed from
Yeah,
its card pool,
another
so
strong advantage engine, but it could still be the best 8 standby deck.
that's
Uh,
true.
Mushoku Tensei is not a 0% either. It still has the really big stat lines if you just pick your lane.
Right. It could be either of those two still. I think uh what's interesting about these bans for these two decks is I think these are still playable. So they're still workable even at a competitive level. I think these are very very tame hits compared to what we've seen in the past like 2 years. You know,
Yeah,
like the
you
last
look at
control deck that got like Data Live and Fate, right? Those were like the last like premier control decks that were running around, like that got banned, and they got
yes.
completely destroyed, right? Boucher had wanted
Yeah.
nothing to do with any of these decks for forever, I guess, is the answer. But quintuplets and Mushoku in a similar position have not been completely killed. So yeah, I guess if you wanted to be that guy, one of those decks could still be it. Um,
I really appreciate your restraint in not nominating Love Live Sunshine. I think that's good of you.
Love Life Sunshine as a control deck.
You
My
tell me.
goodness.
I'm
I,
just saying 8 standby.
8 standby, sure. Uh, you know what? It's getting a new set this year, so I'm
Well,
it could very
can you
well.
when was the last time a multi-title set actually propelled a set like propelled any one of its individual sets back into playability?
It's
I can't
Circus,
think of
right?
one.
Circus.
Like I Charlotte was not a good set. Come
I
on.
said Circus, not Key.
Circus did not have like it didn't make DC playable. It didn't make Seidokai playable. It didn't make newspaper
Made
playable. It
DC
didn't make
good. DC was
yeah,
the
but that
Capo was so
it
good for a while because of that set, though.
yeah, but 90% of the deck was Circus.
Oh, I mean,
I mean,
they
in the
don't
major
make
set.
new sets. They don't make new sets for you to run old cards.
That's what I mean. Like that just doesn't happen, right?
That is
So
true. Sure.
if the Love Live All Star Festival set or whatever is good, I think it'll be fairly self-contained with a couple of splashes here or there for really impactful level threes or events or something.
Hmm.
Whereas, yeah, I just don't see them making like we joked about Little Busters earlier. The best thing you can give Little Busters is another standby climax, and then we see what happens, and it's probably still not great, but you know we can always dream. Where were we? So all right, so we're thinking post ban list. The obvious best deck is probably D side. I don't think that's disputable. I'd say that's Assault Lily and probably oh I don't know, probably Gochi Usa, Ilya, Hololive, Zombieland Saga, bringing it up right behind. Grisaya is the Dark Horse I'd nominate, and Tokyo Revengers isn't good, is it?
I have heard. Okay. I mean, I actually don't know anything about Tokyo Revengers. I just know that people say it could be good again. Or not again, but it could have it could, this could be its moment to be relevant. Uh,
People have high hopes for it in English, because the format is overall slightly lower power, but I think with D side and other Assault Lily builds and Gochiusa and stuff running around in Japanese might not be the best time for it.
right. I think Zombieland could be really good, actually. Um, and I'm talking
It,
mostly about the deck that uses the Brainstorm to play like Dodai.
you mean the shot door deck?
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a very irritating deck. I will say that much.
it does much better against other 1K1 decks than it does against Standby, I think. So, um,
Uh,
not much
I don't
better. Not much better,
I don't have
maybe,
a strong
but
opinion on that. I think it's about the same because that deck is it's not solitaire, but it comes awfully close sometimes.
I just think the numbers. It's like a play the numbers deck, right? I think
Yeah,
the odds are slightly better for it against a field that it can trade uh characters with
yeah,
on
because its
offense.
level,
So
its cards actually do beat down upon opponent cards, whereas standby ideally just cancels and doesn't lose field.
yes.
But yeah, we'll see. And I don't know if any Saikano fans are listening, but what do you think of Saikano going forward?
Hmm.
It's still
I
ban listed. It's
Right.
still got hit.
Yes. Yeah. You can't use Izumi Runner. You can't use the bounce back Utaha card. I think so. I think the set has a few potential ways it could build itself. I think the most obvious choice is just augmenting the old bar door concept with some of the new cards, new tricks, to replace what it lost. Primarily, actually replacing the function of the Izumi runner, I think, is what people are trying to do at the moment. Um,
Hmm.
I think it could be a good deck. I think, uh, in a less standby focused meta, it definitely has the chops uh, be a reasonable contender. I'm not so sure it will reach the heights it peaked at in 2020, right? It was 2020, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it'll get there. Uh, and and I don't think anybody wants Saikano to reach those peaks again. I think a lot of people did not like playing against that deck. So,
I
hopefully
mean, that's
it's
fair.
hopefully it stays like at
I
a reasonable power level. I don't know. You actually own the Saikano cards, so
I do. I was always of the opinion that the deck was good, certainly deserving of tier one status, but always a little bit less powerful than some of the other options at the point in time. It got a lot of memory, sure, but nowadays every single set is printed with some sort of costless option um, to nuke really large amounts of memory if they exist.
right.
So I think that that's really not a strong part of the game plan. I think that if you are going to make this deck really powerful, it might involve the new Kato cards that limit your memory to like five or so, and then from there you just do what you need to do. I don't think that there is a finisher that's particularly noteworthy in the new set. I I just don't. So you might be right in that you have to pick the old level 3 Megumi, but it remains to be seen. I am not going to be testing Saikano particularly rigorously because I just never enjoyed playing the old deck. At that point, I would rather just play Day I Became a God or something to that tune. It's just a more enjoyable experience for me. But for people testing it, it has promise. I don't think it's going to match up quite as well to the top tier. And look, if my statement ages poorly, then so be it. I'd love it if it was really good. But my hopes aren't super high.
A reasonable perspective for sure.
Very moderate
Uh,
perspective. I'm kind of past the age where I want to make hot takes, you know.
mhm, mhm.
Grisaya could be good. That's a deck that I think warrants testing, or at least warrants being part of a testing gauntlet now. Okay, so I think that covers most of the ban list. To those of you who were expecting a 3.5 hour, 12-person extravaganza
Ah,
featuring all sorts of reunions and nemesis showdown
ah.
and hot takes involving Data Live being the best set in the format despite all the bans, I'm sorry we don't have those for you today. Maybe in the future. But we're hoping this can be a, if not weekly, then fortnightly affair where we talk about more topical things, give you some food for thoughts about the wider world of Weiss, and maybe get some different perspectives because I think that's something everyone could use a little more of, seeing things from other people's perspectives. Uh, that being said, let us know if this is something that people enjoy. If you've got ideas for things we could talk about, we are now open to talking about anything Weiss adjacent. We are no longer constrained to set reviews, which of course are useful, but were very tiring. And I think let's be real, they burnt both of us out pretty quickly. We kept it up for a while, but
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, other people have taken on the torch, so I'm so glad about that.
it
Honestly,
Oh,
um,
I am very glad I didn't have to read all the B-side cards. I'm like, you see Tokyo Revengers, and as someone who doesn't care for that franchise, it's like I don't have to read those cards. It's great.
can you
But
imagine having to do a Hololive set review?
I personally cannot. I would have requested that someone else fill in. I'm sure that a certain Canadian gerbil would have been more than happy to fill in my hosting role if that were the case. But that's just no.
It's an
I am not a
offensive amount
fan.
of cards.
It is, and I'm also just not a big fan of the parasocial nature of these hype
Oh,
based. We can talk about.
I thought we weren't doing hot takes, but oh boy.
Well, we can certainly talk about that in the future. I think some of the topics that might be coming up include your recent trip to Houston, your deck choice, which I think some people might. A lot of people are pretty down on the deck that you ran, so there might be some a bit of room to clear the air on why you chose that deck, which happens to also be a deck I think is quite strong. There's a lot of buzz about the entire grading and collecting scene that is largely now
Oh, hot take
dormant. I think that
central.
I don't know if it's hot takes, but I think it's a worthwhile topic to at least discuss. I think that there's a lot that's just not been talked about for good reason because there's just everyone's wanted to be nice and safe and talk about why sports, whereas I think that there's definitely somewhere where we can start talking about the hot topics of Weiss in a meaningful way. And perhaps we might be able to do some episodes that are based on helping people level up their game. Because while I'm washed up, and well, you're not washed up, but I am.
I kind of am.
Yeah, I mean, who isn't washed up these days? But there was a point where we both competed at a very high level, and I'm still top level competing for TCGs. I did well at the Pokemon regionals last weekend. Where I reckon there's a place for us to talk a little bit.
Yeah, I think so
But
too.
yeah, so if you want to find us, you can find either of us on the big Weiss Shorts Discords. We might leave links in the description. You can find us on the global community, or you can just leave us comments here if you find that they are interesting or useful, or if there's anything you specifically want to hear, or if you just, hate one or both of us, then please feel free to let us know. We always welcome feedback, and we want to see ways where this could be improved. So, if that's all, I think I think there's a lot of stuff to talk about, and I look forward to discussing it with you and the community, Tom.
Yeah, I agree. We might have guests in the future too. Who knows?
Oh boy, I love interviews.
Yeah.
So
Alrighty.
from us at Top Tier Cheers, if you listen this far, thank you very much. Let us know if there's anything you reckon would be really helpful to talk about, or something that you just want our opinions on, and we will take all feedback into consideration, and hopefully, this might make someone's drive to work a little bit more amusing.